Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors. 615-737-1045 is the number. We're going to go to Mike Herndon of PK.com, who wrote an article. New era, new identity, what 2025 NFL draft says about the Titans' future. It's a great read. It felt like I was reading a transcript from a Cover 2 episode, because there was almost everything that we have talked about and agreed on this show. But I want to start, Mike, with this. When I saw Gunnar Helm flash up on my screen as a Tennessee Titans draft pick, I sighed. I said, "Ugh, this is awful." And everybody's like, "Well, why is this awful? Is he a bad player?" I said, "No, this is awful because I know that Justin Graver and Mike Herndon, who are both UT Longhorn fans, will continually and constantly say, 'Hook 'em' whenever he scores a touchdown." How many hook 'em tweets have you put out on Twitter about Gunnar Helm?
I mean, specifically about Gunnar Helm, I think one, maybe two so far, but I'm keeping plenty in the chamber. I mean, it's definitely going to I think there's going to be plenty of those coming.
Now, you've been a big Josh Wiley fan in the past. On F Words, we were all three, me, you, and Stoney, Josh Wiley fans. That obviously bit us in the butt this year. Where are we at on Gunnar Helm, tight end one propaganda? Are you pushing that? Because I kind of believe that Gunnar Helm will end up being tight end one sooner rather than later.
You know, I would imagine Chig probably gets the nod for the first little bit, just veteran status, you know, that kind of thing. But I think Helm, by the end of the year, may be their most productive tight end from a pass-catching standpoint. I mean, he's very talented, and I think Cam Ward's going to love the way that he plays football and the way that he sees the game through a quarterback's eyes, too.
With Gunnar Helm, what are the Tennessee Titans getting from what he was in Texas that can translate over to the Tennessee Titans offense?
He's a big guy. I mean, 6'5", pretty good wingspan, and he's got the surest set of hands of just about anybody in the draft. And if you want to talk about a classic NFL tight end as far as just catches everything, you know, can go post guys up. There's some great clips of him from plays he made at Texas this last year of just Quinn Ewers throwing up jump balls, whether it be on the sidelines or in the end zones, and just letting Helm go up and get them. And he's very good at that. He understands how to use his body. He understands how to position himself and use that frame to shield off defenders. And then he's a contested catch-making machine. And then there's just the feel for the game aspect. You know, he's not a burner. You know, I think his combine time was probably worse athletically than what he really is. From a speed standpoint, I think he had an ankle injury during that combine performance. Not to make excuses for my Longhorn friend there, but I think he's a better athlete than what he probably tested as, and but ultimately the biggest thing is feel for the game and ability to catch in traffic.
Well, when you're looking at this entire draft class, we were talking, you know, just the other day about how I'm not crashing out as much as I usually am on some of these reaches because I understand the vision, I understand the plan. What was your biggest takeaway from this draft class in who these players are and what they represent to the future of the Tennessee Titans?
Yeah, it certainly feels like a foundational class in the sense of they're getting guys that fit their vision of what they want this team to be moving forward. And you know, I mean, frankly, the slate is about as blank as it could be for an NFL team. You don't have a lot of guys that are holding spots on this roster that you feel like are going to be here in 3 or 4 years, most likely. So this has a chance to be a class that I think sets the tone. And I think with that, they made a pretty clear emphasis on character, football character, guys that work hard, do the right things on and off the field, and then and leaders to go along with that. And then also traits. You know, this was not a go out and sort by, you know, who had the most receiving yards, draft that guy kind of draft class. This was more of looking at who these players can be as pros rather than who they were as college athletes. I think those are the two things that jumped out to me the most.
We're on the phone with Mike Herndon. You can follow him on Twitter at Mike Herndon, SK1 on Twitter. And then, of course, we're talking about his article over at PK.com. New era, new identity. What 2025 NFL draft says about the Titans' future.
Well, let's start off with a guy who wasn't drafted. That's Restrepo. What do you think his odds are on making the team?
I think it's going to be competitive at the bottom of the receiver group. I mean, say what you want about, Traylon Burks and guys like that. But I think that Bryce Oliver, Traylon Burks, who knows what happens with Van Jefferson. I could see him being a starter, or I could see him having, being a late cut guy too. So I think it's going to be competitive at the bottom of the depth chart for receiver. I see them probably keeping at least 6, maybe 7. Colton Dowell's another guy that's going to be in that group. But Restrepo, I think he's talented. I was a big fan of his as a potential draft player. And I think if you look at all the production he had at Miami, which was not just with Cam Ward. He had 1,000 yards with Cam Ward, but he also had 1,000 yards the year before as well. So he's put up too much production. And just has that ability to get open, that feel for the game, kind of like what I talked about with Gunnar Helm. I think he just has that knack in that feel. Also a great hands guy, trustworthy catcher of the football. And he's the kind of guy that quarterbacks like to throw it to, because he knows how to get open. He's going to feel that soft spot in the coverage and get there and present himself as a target. So I think what he brings to the game from that standpoint gives him a real shot to make the roster, because the Titans don't have a ton of guys like that on this current wide receiver list that they've got going into camp.
I know a lot of fans are talking about this Gabe Davis kid here from Jacksonville and Buffalo. Are you even interested in him for the Titans?
Not particularly. I think there's a reason he got cut, and Jacksonville paid a lot of money to cut him. And I mean, he kind of doesn't really fit the mold of what the Titans seem to be after at wide receiver, frankly. And if you're looking at this team, I'd rather them give some of the young guys that they just invested in, like DK and A.M. Minor, a chance to get into the rotation rather than burying them behind another guy that, has been cast off from 2 teams in the last 2 years now.
I guess we have to talk about Cam Ward. And, I've seen numerous times Brian Callahan, the head coach there, said we're going to develop the offense around Ward's skill set. And, I'm trying to wonder, what proof do we have that he's actually ever done that? I know you keep bringing up Joe Burrow, but he was not the play caller and not the guy developing the game plans. He was just relaying game plans. So kind of explain to me, why do you believe that he can be the guy to develop Ward around and the offense around him?
Yeah, it's a fair point. Zach Taylor should get due credit. It was not all Brian Callahan molding that offense around Joe Burrow. But I do think that that's relevant experience in the fact that he was in the room. He saw, how they went about it. He certainly was a part of the brain trust and the discussions of how they were going to build that offense. In borrowing some of those concepts from LSU and things like that, the Bengals were so widely praised for in their development of Joe Burrow. And it makes a lot of sense for them to try to copy-paste that idea to, Cam Ward in this rookie season. I mean, because, look, all players have their preferences, right? I mean, some players see a certain play better than others, or just have a better feel for it. And Cam Ward's talked about, switch verts and forward verticals, and that's kind of a theme of that's his favorite play. And it would be foolish of Brian Callahan or any coach, frankly, to say, no, I know you love running that. I know you're really good at executing it, but I have to run my system. I think that's an arrogant approach to coaching, to not take into account, especially your quarterback. And your quarterback's got to be bought into whatever your plan is. And if you have to give him some of his favorite bells and whistles in exchange for him, being open-minded about adopting some of yours, I think that's a give and take you have to make as a play caller.
If Cam Ward looks somewhat similar to Will Levis as well as Mason Rudolph this upcoming season, what would be your viewpoint at season's end if Cam Ward looked exactly as though they looked?
They'll be looking for a new coach. I think that's, I don't expect that to be the case. I think Cam Ward's a better quarterback prospect than Levis, and certainly way more talented than Rudolph. But if the results are similar, especially given the investment in the offensive line, and I know the rug has kind of been pulled out from Titans fans the last couple off seasons on the offensive line with various investments and whatnot. But I feel differently about this group than I have each of the last 2 off seasons. That this is going to be a competent offensive line. It may not be the best offensive line in the NFL, but it's not going to be Nicholas Petit-Frere. There are adults in the room, at that offensive line group now, and I think they're going to give him enough time to be able to at least make plays. And this is a passable receiver room. It's not a great receiver room. It's not even probably top half of the NFL, but it's passable. There's no reason personnel-wise that Cam Ward should not have, a performance, a rookie season as far as his specific performance, maybe not team success, that guys like Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, Drake May even showed flashes, did last year. I mean, there's just no reason that he should not be able to do that, given the support around him. And if he doesn't, I think the blame should fall squarely on Brian Callahan.
There you have it, Mike Herndon.
Mike, with the picks of Femi Oladejo, it just is like they kind of went with traits over production. I think someone in the chat said it best. Femi had the traits of a first rounder, but the production of a fourth rounder. Why do you think they went with someone like Femi Oladejo, who is new to the position, and chose his traits over production?
It's an interesting question because, obviously they could use instant impact at that edge rusher position, right? And I don't think Femi Oladejo is most likely to be the best instant pass rusher that they could have brought in for 2025 out of the group that was available at that pick. However, I think what it tells me is they are not looking at this as a 2025 selection. This is an investment in the future, and they think that the upside with Femi Oladejo is greater than the upside that some of those other edge rushers at 52 would have brought as far as year 2, year 3, year 4, when they expect to be more competitive. I think this draft class aligned with a lot of their words this offseason, which I appreciate, that they understand that this is going to take some time. This is not going to be a microwave results kind of situation in Tennessee. This is not going to be Washington, most likely, although I don't know that that's necessarily out of the question, but that's not the expectation. They're building this thing for the long haul, and I think Oladejo, in their view, has more upside as a long-term project. And look, he showed some serious flashes. There are some things to like about his tape, especially for a guy being so raw at that position, that you think, hey, if he's coachable, which by all reports he is, and if he's got the athletic ability, which he certainly does, we can get more out of him than what he showed at UCLA playing, basically 7 games at the position.
Do you have confidence that this defensive staff can be that? I mean, they didn't really have much of a pass rush last year, and the way that they're going, you wrote about it, but the way they're moving towards bigger bodies at the edge, I don't see a lot of pass rush upside with this group. So it's up to the staff and up to the players to carry out what the staff has decided to do in practice and do in game planning and all that kind of stuff. Do you have faith in this defensive staff? I mean, I know you like Denard Wilson, but, Ben Bloom, who's going to be pretty responsible for the development of Femi Oladejo and this pass rush group. I mean, how much faith do you have in this defensive staff?
Not a ton. They've got to show it. It's not like Ben Bloom, is the Bill Callahan of outside linebacker coaches. So I think they've certainly got to show their worth in bringing a guy like that along. But I do think that there's something to, look, say what you want about Ben Bloom. He's a professional coach. Femi Oladejo is going to have time to commit to purely learning how to be a pass rusher, not, going to class and not spending half his time at outside off-ball linebacker. He's going to have more time to dedicate to it. And I think their idea is that there's just some untapped potential there. And I do like the fact that they're going in this direction of heavier, or players that play with heavier hands at that outside linebacker position. Because, they had Arden Key, they had, and they still have Arden Key, but they had Arden Key and Harold Landry as the primary players out there this past year. And those guys are just, mostly finesse rushers. Key has a little bit of a bull rush, but it's certainly not an A-plus kind of level rush for him. And Landry had no bull rush. Yeah, he was all finesse, all running around guys, not through them. And I think this is something that Robert Mays of The Athletic has kind of been on lately, and it's something that I've kind of gotten on board with, is that you just can't play that way in the NFL anymore. These tackles are too athletic, and they know how to just run guys past the quarterback. If that is your only move, even if you're really good at it, you just limit your effectiveness versus a guy that can push the pocket and create disruption that way. So I like that they're going in this Draymond Jones, Femi Oladejo mold with heavier hands, guys that are going to get push even if they don't necessarily get pressure. Because I do think push matters, and I think they've got a defensive line that can do that a little bit now.
So when you look at this staff, you look at this draft, you look at what they did in the offseason, we've heard that it's a 2 or 3 year rebuild. It's patience over panic. We've heard that the owner, Amy Adams Strunk, is on board with this plan of patience over panic. Do you think that maybe this coaching staff is a little safer than we initially thought going into the offseason? Because I know that you've had your issues with Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon. Rand Carthon obviously gone, but I know you've had a wavering faith in Brian Callahan as a head coach. So do you think that this development class that is a foundational class to build a culture, do you think that means that Brian Callahan's a little bit safer than we expected?
I don't know, because I still think part of my issue with Callahan last year, and it will be my issue with him this year as well if this year goes the same way, was that I did not feel that the team got better as the year went on. And I think that's a trait of good teams for the most part is even if a team is not super talented and not competing for a division title, a well-coached team improves over the course of the season as they work, as they find angles to kind of better themselves against their competition. And I just did not see that, not to mention all it just felt like there was some chaos at times between special teams and just a lack of, attention to detail. But I think that also could just be, look, as a first-year coach with 3 first-time, coordinators that are leading the charge there, and they had veteran assistants underneath them, but there's nothing that prepared those guys for the game day experience of, hey, you've got to call a play, every 30 seconds here, and can you keep up with the pace of the game while still managing personnel and everything else like that? And it is something that I think people get better at over time, and you would hope that Callahan and his staff show meaningful steps this year. If they don't, and if this team is similarly bad, I think they do have to cut ties, as much as it will be painful to start Cam Ward on the same track again with, a coach getting fired after his first year, and then, you start a new system and a new relationship. You don't want to go that route, but at some point, if they aren't showing signs of improvement, you have to. And so it doesn't have to mean that they win 8 games or 9 games or make the playoffs or whatever, but they have to show improvement between, the end of last year and the end of next year. And as long as they're heading in the right direction, even if they start 0-6 and then they finish, whatever the rest of the game should be, 6-5 or whatever, and it's still 6-11, but you finish strong and you showed progress, I think that keeps them safe. But we just need to see that.
I guess lastly, going out the back door, retired NFL jersey numbers. What are your thoughts on that?
I really love the Cowboys 88 thing. The fact that it's a legacy number for them that kind of gets handed down to special players that come in. And I think that keeps the players' memory alive better than hanging it in the rafters and never seeing it again. Because my personal opinion, every time I see 88, I think of Drew Pearson, I think of Michael Irvin, I think of Des Bryant while I'm watching CeeDee Lamb. And I think of how cool that number is and what a special honor that is. And I love the idea of Cam Ward wearing number 1. And then every time we see him on the field, if he's successful here, we think about Warren Moon and that kind of legacy of that Oilers Titans franchise at that point. I love that. And I'm a big fan of Moon allowing Ward to kind of take that mantle from him.
Well, Mike, we appreciate your time today, and you can go read Mike Herndon over at PK.com, where his article talking about what the Tennessee Titans draft means for the Titans' future. It's a great read. We didn't get to hit on everything in there, so we left a little meat on the bones for some readers over there. So, Mike, prediction for how long this Cam Ward versus Will Levis battle is going to last?
Oh, gosh. 1 week into training camp.
Love it.
My final answer.
All right, Mike. We'll talk to you later. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. See you guys.
When we come back, we'll talk more and have a little bit more reaction to what Mike said. And Jackson's got something that he just is dying for me to bring up on air. Well, to do that just for you, because you've had a rough day, I will talk about this, even though it'll make me a total hypocrite. You can hear me be a hypocrite when we come back. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone.